That's right. We're starting it early this year. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait. I'm not even asleep. Ah! Hey everyone, welcome to Keto and Crime, a very special Keto and Crime. Did you know that Jodi Hildebrandt wrote books? Yeah, she did. And I have read half of one of them. I will be finishing it and finishing my summary and review for you next week. But I wanted to go ahead and get part one out to you so that just like I did with 𝗙𝗵𝗿𝗁, you'll get a better understanding of the mindset of Jodi Hildebrandt and how she fed into 𝗟𝗏𝗁𝗁 and all the �horsepucky that's going on. I thought it was kind of one of those. I'm a very curious person, and I know that a lot of you that watch me are too. So rather than you having to buy this work of literary genius, that I would just purchase it and read it for you. Now, when I say purchase it, it was free on Amazon to my Kindle, so I didn't actually pay for it. I'm sure she gets something for that, but I would rather my little pennies, go to her than a bunch of people buy the book just out of curiosity. So that's why I do that. That's kind of why I did that with 𝗙𝗵𝗿𝗁. So get your love sloths ready as we go through the world that is the mind of the monster that is Jodi Hildebrandt with her 2019 book, You Are Not Enough, or You're Not Enough. It is 167 pages, just under 3,000 words. It was published in 2019, so we can only assume it was written sometime between 2017 and 2019. I'm assuming it could have been earlier. I really couldn't find any information on that. So it's a very short book. Some of the chapters have 15, 20 pages. Others have 4. So it's really a mixed bag as to where she tended to put her oomph. I was able to find quite a bit about her past because she does have an entire chapter devoted to her story, if it's true. There are things I feel sorry for her about, and I can have a lot of empathy, but it does not excuse the crimes that she has done and the damage she's done to countless people. And the greatest true crimer of all time, Stephanie Harlow, she just said in her video on the case that it's obvious that Jodi and Ruby are fed by their own particular brand of religion, and this shines through in this book. Also, Stephanie was pronouncing connections as connexions because of the accent, and so I can't get that out of my head. So you'll probably hear me say connexions, blame Stephanie Harlow, all her fault. So with that being said, subscribe below. My Patreon, my memberships are all below if you want to support the channel. If not, just listen and enjoy, comment, like. That is the best thing you can do for me. And with that, let's dive into the book. All right, we'll start with the intro of the book, entitled The Greatest Lie. She says, there are some statements that we tell ourselves in life that are absolutely not true, that my needs are not important, my life is so unfair, and nobody would care about me if they knew the real me. And you know how a busted clock is right twice a day? There's several of those moments in here where some of the stuff she's writing I think is spot on, but then all the convolutedness comes in. So she talks about that. She talks about how we see ourselves as less than we are, and I completely agree with that. But then she brings in, of course, God and how God knows the true us. God has made us all divine. That's very, very, very LDS. You know, just go over to True Crime Unveiled and listen to Jen LDS is all about becoming a divine human being, reaching their version of nirvana. So that definitely comes in. And then she brings out the word we've heard so much in the last 3 or 4 weeks: distortion. Distortion has convinced too many of us that our actual actions are equal to our worth, and that our value is contingent upon our choices. So right here, she's kind of setting the groundwork for removing responsibility and choice, which is kind of weird because later on she talks about responsibility being a hallmark, like our choices. I kind of agree with her, that not all of our choices do not always define us, because humans make mistakes, but it's like it's almost a predestination kind of thing. If you have the right kind of connection with God, your choices don't matter, but then again, they do, because you have to put forth the right image. I know none of this is making sense, and if you're like me, you probably need to drink heavily while you reads it. But she gives a little chart in this book that kind of truth versus distortion. She says truth is I am, saying what I am, where distortion says my choices mean I am. Then she goes in, truth is that you're a child of God. Distortion is enough or not enough. The truth is you're divine. Distortion is important or unimportant. And finally, I am a soul, and distortion is I am a taint. TANT. So we're genitalia. And then she goes into some, others like, the truth is you're beautiful, distortion is you're too feminine or too masculine. So it's a lot of word salad. It's definitely a lot of word salad with some cayenne and honey on top. And if you don't know what I mean by that, evidently the wounds that the children received from their torture were treated with honey and cayenne, not medicine, not tender loving care, honey and cayenne. So these people are indeed monsters. But then she goes on to how slippery the deception of distortion is, and that it is persuading you that your choices have power and that they can actually change your eternal identity. There's that LDS doctrine again, that we are what we are. And like I said, it's all about her worldview through religion. And then she goes into what is truth. And truth, there's two truths. There's truths with a capital T and truths with a lowercase t. And yes, we've all had grammar. We know that. But that's true of any word, depending on where it's positioned in a sentence. But basically, she says that in truth with a capital T means every experience you are responsible to perceive in 3 areas: what you think, what you feel, what you will do, and that these 3 areas control your life. Truth with a lowercase t refers to things that are not factual, like your opinions, your perceptions, your emotions, and things that are changeable. See this word salad? See it? And then she goes on to how distortion is the great violator of truth. Distortion is choosing not to perceive your experiences in truth. And distortion is what I'm experiencing right now, having to make sense of this garbage. God help me. All right. Sorry. Momentary technical brain difficulties. And then from there, we finally go into the first chapter. And this is her story. She talks about how she was born the 6th of 7 children. Her father was a military man who taught her all about hard work, and that his motto was, "You're a Hildebrandt, go hard or go home." We saw a lot of that echo in Jesse Hildebrandt's interview, the kind of family they were. They're not necessarily wrong with being, go-getters, but it can be taken to an unhealthy limit. And she said that unfortunately, by the time she was born, her mom lost a son to a heart condition at 4 months old, and her mother was completely emotionally shut off, as was her father. So she didn't really establish a good relationship with either of them. It was more just teaching her how to survive in a world they didn't trust. Again, those LDS beliefs coming in there. If you remember any of Chad Daybell's novels, that sentiment is pervasive. And I know they're not symbolic of all LDS, but that does tend to be, a focus on the end times tends to be something that all evangelical Christians focus on, and LDS definitely fits into that per Parview. So basically, she said that she immaturely concluded that her security, worth, and value depended on her being nice, and she became a people pleaser to her detriment. When she was 5 years old, between the ages of 5 and 9, she was abused by a 15-year-old neighbor. Then she kept it to herself. And even when she did tell family, it was kind of swept under the rug. Again, that will handle it in the church. And then when she was when she was older, she said that her family invited a 16-year-old person from a placement program. Maybe that was their mission. I don't know. And he started molesting her too, or abusing her too. And that she really believed, because it happened to her twice, that she was truly worthless. Now, here is where I can truly empathize with Jodi Hildebrandt. That is a terrible, terrible way to, yeah. So I misspoke. The earlier boy abused her from ages 2 to 5, and then the 16-year-old between 7 and 9. So my apologies there. But yeah, so I can certainly see how that fed into the monster. It's kind of like making a monster, and then she said how she suffered migraines, severe migraines, until she was 21, and she was about to go on her mission. So she wanted to get rid of the migraines. She was always told by family and friends that it was because she was too high strung, and that her emotions were causing it, and she needed to get rid of those emotions. She finally went to see a therapist because God told her to. And after a 3-hour session with this therapist, she had all of the terrible memories of what happened to her laid bare, and her migraines were instantly healed. Oh, Jodi, I wish it was that easy as a my fellow migraine sufferer. Chapter 2, what is connection? That is, these are very, she's got a theme for every chapter. But she says that you need to assess your need for connection by asking yourselves a series of questions. And I'm going to give you those questions. Now get your checkboards out and check off with me. Do you fit this need for connection? And when she talks about connection, she means with God above all, and then with the important relationships in your life. So get out your pencils or your pens, and let's take this test. Do you feel alone, uncared for, unimportant, or not enough? Do you feel unlovable? Do you resist accepting help from others? Are you curious about why things happen to you? Do you feel misunderstood? Do you keep secrets and hide things from those you love? Do you question your skills and abilities? Do you feel responsible for fixing things or people when they perceive they are wrong? So yeah, do you become easily angered, and are you willing to accept responsibility for are you unwilling to accept responsibility for your choices? That sounds like any human that has ever walked the face of the earth has felt those things at one time. Maybe not all at once, but throughout their life, they have all felt that. And so, yeah, this is where she gets real culty, in my opinion, where the foundations of the cult that would become connexions was kind of laid, because any cult, whether it's Chad Daybell's cult, whether it's the People's Temple, whether it's, any other cult that's out there, the first thing they do is make things so generalized that literally any person that crosses their path, would have felt these things. So this is where it gets real culty. And so from here, she kind of bounces into more questions, which we're not going to go over. They're all very generalized. And then she says, if you're feeling any of these, you seek a connection with God. And this is not from her book, but I will say that in life, we have a God-shaped hole somewhere. Now, that's not saying that I'm saying there is a God. I don't know. I don't see any proof of one. So that's why I identify as an atheist. But other people do see proof of one. It's all about perception there. And so, but everybody has a God-shaped hole. And what I mean by that is that there's a hole there for a guiding hand, an ultimate connection that we will feel with anything that we can, whether it's a religion, whether it's a personal relationship with a deity, whether it's obsessive, whether it's relationships or an addiction of some kind. We will fill that God-shaped hole somehow. And that's why people are at large very easily manipulated. I mean, Jim Jones convinced almost 1,000 people to drink cyanide-laced Flavor Aid in 1978, and not much has changed since. How many mass suicides have we seen by virtue of cults and people that just get misled? People are so easily manipulated, and it's because we all have that need for that thing that is greater than us. And so that's why I say we all have a God-shaped hole. And then she talks about the foundational principles of connection, and she gives us a list here. A lot of lists. She likes lists. You know, she definitely would have enjoyed listicles on YouTube in the early 2000s. Impeccable honesty, rigorous personal responsibility, vulnerable humility, because her and Ruby are so humble, and a connection, and then the willingness to take the connection self-assessment. And then she gives us some factoids about whether or not you are truly connected. And it's things like, are you honest regardless of the outcomes? Are you experiencing sustained and consistent safety, which creates trust? And are you celebrating and embracing yourself and others for the divine beings that you are? Again, there's that LDS doctrine. And so this could appeal to any LDS member out there. And just like Jen and I discussed in our last couple of episodes, all right, Jen knows from being Mormon or having been Mormon that Mormons like to support each other. So, you know, Jodi was on the list of a preferred counselor on the LDS rolls. And so she was getting all these fellow church members. And so her ideology feeds her therapy, and then her therapy feeds the needs of those congregations. So it's all very Mormon, whether or not you want to admit it or not. And so then she goes into chapter 3, which is eternal principles that govern connections. And she talks about things like honesty, responsibility, humility, truth, basically a repeat of what's in chapter 2. And then she gets into what is the truth. And she says there are certain things that are, you know, absolutely factual, and some things that are more perceptions, even though they may be. There's the truth, and then there's your truth, is a good way to break this down. But the truth is, the clouds are above me. I am 5 feet, or I am whatever tall. Today is my birthday. I cooked that steak to 400 degrees. If I jump off, I will fall. That car is blue. It's 75 degrees out. Things that are objectively measured. And then she gets more into subjective truth, which would be more about your emotions and your feelings. The car is ugly. This room is uncomfortably warm. I'm having a great day. My emotions are uncomfortable. That meeting was stressful. So again, there are some truths here. You know, the broken clock is wrong. You know, there is the fact that it's 75 degrees in this room, and then somebody that says it's too cold in this room. You know, one is observable fact. The other is how I'm feeling. So yes, there is a difference between your truth and the truth. And there is a difference there. And then from there, she goes into chapter 4, and where she talks about disconnection. And she gives us kind of a spectrum of distortion in this. So we're getting into the good stuff. And I will put that little diagram from her book right here. But basically, she says that disconnection and distortion is characterized by the following: any form of dishonesty. Again, more lists. I would say 45% of this book is lists. Breaking commitments, personal irresponsibility, control, manipulative anger, resentments, lack of humility, living in fear, being prideful or arrogant. Basically, all the bad things that you could think of are distortion or disconnection. You know, distortion causes disconnection. Distortion is the static you get around yourself and the truth, the divine truth that you are, you know, going to be a god one day. Again, LDS doctrine there, and that causes disconnection from God and from the world and from the truth, and, you know, from the power outlet and whatever else. And then basically anything that goes contrary to the truth kind of runs afoul. And then she goes into a very long story about an alcoholic that she once counseled by the name of Scott that she cures, and that it was because of the lies he told himself that his distortion was able to disconnect him in the way of an alcohol addiction. I hope she did help him, but she did not cure him. Maybe she helped him get on a path where he could. You're never really cured of an addiction, Jodi. You're never really cured of an addiction. I am a food addict. I am an obsessive compulsive overeater. And the only way that I've lost over, almost 100, I've lost over 150 pounds now, is because I'm able to control that by not having trigger foods in the house, by eating foods that keep my blood sugar level, and by just willing myself into not eating things that I know will set me off on a binge. And I still binge occasionally. I do. So I'm not cured, but I have it under control. And that's the same thing with a drug addict or an alcoholic or any kind of person that's addicted to any substance. You have to control your access to it and how you're able to handle it. So you're never cured, Jodi. You did not cure him, if the Scott even existed. And then she talks about how his feelings were, I'm not enough, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm incapable, I'm inadequate. Sure, I'm sure he did have those feelings. And then she talks about some lies that we tell ourselves. Basically, the lie of self-deprecation, which is I'm not enough, I'm unworthy, those kind of things. And then she gets into another lie we tell ourselves, self-adulation, which is basically overlove. She says, I deserve, kind of framed in these phrases, I deserve to have whatever I want. I'm unique, special, and different. I can do what I want. I'm the exception. So she's saying that we tend to migrate towards extremes. And again, there's that clock that's right, a couple of times a day. Humans do, the moderation is very hard. To be in the middle is very hard. It's usually one extreme or the other. I mean, look at the political climate in the country. It's one extreme or the other, where the answer is in the middle. So, yeah, I think that's just human nature. Again, something that could apply to literally any person out there, specifically any LDS person out there. And then we got into the 5th chapter, which ends part 1 of the book, where she talks about over 4 pages. It's basically saying you should choose truth over distortion. Sure, absolutely. I suppose you should. But it took her 4 pages to say that, and then part 1 just ends abruptly. And that's where I'm going to end this summary. I'll be back next week, towards the end of next week, with the final part of the book. I've got to go buy some more wine before I can finish it. And I hope you enjoyed this. If you really enjoyed this, she does have other books out there. If you want me to do them, I can. I'm also going to react to a couple of her podcasts, in addition to mixing in my 31 Days of Halloween, because we're starting that early. You will see a video drop next week about that, and we're going to start it early. So it's going to be a fun packed October. I've got so many collaborations. I've got so many great content, cults. I'm going to deep dive into secret societies. I'm going to talk about some classic true crime cases, and I'm going to talk about horror movies because I love it. It's going to be a great couple of months coming up, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you come along for the ride. And if you just found me, I hope you subscribe. And if you've been with me a while, thank you so much. And until next time, 𝗙𝗋𝗀.